Welcome to the Startups Without Borders podcast. I'm Valentina Primo, and I'm the founder of this platform, this community, and this movement for entrepreneurs who are starting new ventures while starting new lives. Each week, we'll be sharing inspiring interviews with the most audacious startup founders while highlighting resources for anyone starting up. Gear up to get some real-life advice. You're listening to the Startups Without Borders podcast, episode 20. I'm very happy to announce another of our talks revisited, where we share the most thought-provoking panels held at the Startups Without Borders Summit. In this panel, Yama Saraj, Afghan entrepreneur and founder of SensAI, sits down with three key investors in the refugee investment landscape. Apoorv Karmakar, managing director at Amplio Ventures, Nikita Thakrar, co-founder and director of Included VC, and Kristina Vayda, executive director at FAIRE. It's a well-known statistical fact that immigrants are overrepresented amongst entrepreneurs. In fact, 55% of $1 billion startups in Silicon Valley were founded by at least one immigrant. As the number of refugees is projected to increase, how can the investment sector tap into this opportunity? Don't miss this insightful debate.
Okay, so exciting. Thank you so much. Welcome, dear panel, dear guest. My name is Yama Saraj. I'll be hosting this exciting panel. Now, there has been a lot of talk about the necessity of diversity and inclusivity in the tech and innovation space. Maybe this necessity is due to the fact that a lot of tech is being developed by white male and notably in California. But this does not necessarily imply that these people also understand the needs and problems of the people less privileged than themselves, such as refugees, such as migrants. Now, also there has been also great initiatives to advocate, raise awareness, educate in order to foster entrepreneurship among a diverse group. Now, beyond this, there's also a need for investors who are backing audacious entrepreneurship from non-traditional backgrounds, such as refugees. And today on this panel, we have the pleasure to have Kristina Vayda. She is the managing director of FAIRE, Apoorv Karmakar from Amplio Ventures, and Nikita Thakrar from Included VC. Let's start with Nikita. Could you please take 1 minute to elaborate a little bit about yourself? And then can Kristina, and then maybe Apoorv, and then we'll have some panel discussion. And also, in the meanwhile, the audience can interact with us. So please come up with interesting questions. Nikita, please, the floor is yours.
The most extraordinary diverse individuals and giving them access, opportunity, and knowledge into the inclusive kind of holistic world of venture capital.
Wow, that's great. That's within 1 minute. Good job. Okay, please, Kristina.
Thanks, Yama. So FAIRE is a French endowment fund, and it's a philanthropic project that was founded by a political refugee who is also a successful entrepreneur. Our mission is to support refugee entrepreneurs who want to launch businesses here in France. And the reason being, Nick Noponsubipat, who is our founder, who had to flee Thailand back in 2014 with the arrival of the military junta, he really, through his experience, understood not only the need to support refugees and migrants who want to launch their own businesses because the support system is lacking a little bit, but also the high value of the fact that to be able to survive and to thrive when having to go through forced migration takes a lot of the same characteristics that make for a great entrepreneur. Determination, drive, risk-taking, the ability to see things through. So these are all things that we look to put forth with FAIRE.
Okay, great. How about yourself, Apoorv? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, and I've never been accused of brevity, so I'll try to keep it very short. Amplio Ventures is committed to really solving for the problem of integration and assimilation or lack thereof of the millions of displaced migrants globally. That's the problem we focus on, and I think, like, for the way I describe our work is that we think that what we want to do is we want to leverage our investments in tech and tech-enabled solutions to sort of create that impact ourselves. It's not to sort of outsource the impact generation to the portfolio itself, but like really investing in solutions that we can then leverage to basically create the impact ourselves. And I can go into it like, during the conversation. So I'll basically cut it there and then back to you, Yama.
Thank you. No, it's great what you guys are all doing. Let's talk about the need for investing in refugees. What are we talking about? Why there is a necessity to invest in refugee entrepreneurs? Which Kristina, you already mentioned a little bit. Could you elaborate a little bit about this?
Well, for FAIRE, it's about opportunity as well. The experience that we have in France and that we know exists in a lot of other countries is that there's a perception around refugees and migrants that they are a cost for society, that they are helpless. And yet we know that that's not true. And in fact, we firmly believe that not only are they a huge value add and a source of potential economic growth, but they bring with them skills and a unique vision. And that's actually good business. That's a good investment opportunity because they have the ability to see opportunities that local citizens maybe they won't see because they don't have the same experience. So that unique vision enables them to see opportunities that we feel are potential good business opportunities. We also know that France is a fairly risk averse country when it comes to business. We'll put it that way. And so when you're a refugee or migrant, you come and you've left everything behind. You've left your bank account. You've left your family, your professional network, your social network. Starting a business from scratch is hard, regardless. But with those added factors, it's even that much more difficult. And so to get access to startup, even, we're not even talking about seed, venture capital, we're talking pre-seed, we're talking love money. How do we get the capital necessary to launch a business? So we know that when you've left everything behind, you don't have that. So that's something that FAIRE is we're filling that gap. Because we know that the opportunity is there, that the potential is there. They just are missing this, and through no fault of their own, through a series of events that have happened in their home countries that have forced them to leave.
Great, thank you very much. Apoorv, could you please elaborate about how many people are we talking about? What is the market size for this business?
Yeah, for us, I think by our estimates, I think the whole galaxy of forcibly displaced migrants is about probably 70 million. And again, the number shifts depending on who you ask and who you talk to. But the case for investing in refugees for us also comes down to a lot of what Kristina just pointed out and something that you touched upon. We really believe that lived experience is very necessary for an entrepreneur to be able to create solutions, right? If you haven't grappled with a problem, what are the odds of you being able to you being the best person to solve those problems? That's one. Secondly, also as a VC investor, you ultimately are investing in a business, right? So the product market fit also becomes very important. And there is a whole market out there that basically has been left uncatered. Specifically, we are right now in middle of a fund that is focused on digital workplace solution, and all these suite of workplace solutions that we see very helpful as they are, Zoom and Slack, they were made with a very sort of niche or a specific use case in mind, which is somebody who's in California with a very stable internet, English speakers, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole swath of users that are sort of left overlooked. That leads to basically what we call use gaps in these solutions. So who do you think will be able to solve for them? Probably somebody who has experience, or somebody who understands that if you are, let's say, somewhere in Malawi and you somehow land a job in a company that your team is basically everyone on West Coast, how do you build trust in that team? How do you sort of engage and participate in that team? So unless you've actually left that problem, we feel that the odds of you being able to solve them are probably quite low. And that's why for us, investing in refugees is a good way to do it. Comes down to simple, I think both impact math as well as just venture math for us.
Okay, great. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm myself of refugee descent. I'm originally from Afghanistan, and I've been an entrepreneur for some while. But I recognize sometimes it's a little bit challenging to mobilize resources. Nikita, I've been following what you've been doing. Of course, there's something called cognitive bias. Could you elaborate a little bit about this, and what are you working on with the included VC?
So to kind of set the scene, if you think about immigrants and refugees in US, because that's where all the data and reports usually start from, 50% of individuals are most likely to start a business if they're an immigrant. That's a huge amount. That's not like 2%, 3%. And if you think about America's top valued, as Apoorv said, tech firms, or the highly valued tech firms, 60% of them are founded by a first or second generation immigrant. So the data is simple. It's not a few percent. It's very large, and it's a big gap. Yet, if you look at all the funding, 80% goes to white males from certain universities. That's just the way it is. So the data kind of, if you look at venture, if we're looking at numbers, then why are these numbers not being aligned or corroborated? And I think something that we need to think about is naturally, and it just happens, it's not something we can look at, is bias. We like people that look like us, and it's unconscious. So I look at a female that say might be Asian and think, okay, I like her, and I don't know why, but I would naturally give her the money. Whereas I meet someone from another gender, race, culture, there's no connection. And that's why we realized that there seems to be a discrepancy in individuals saying we want change in the landscape, and they're actually being changed. So we can train entrepreneurs, you can mentor entrepreneurs, and that is amazing. However, if the people at the top who are giving the money are not changing, what are we going to do? And that's how Included VC was born. That let's find diversity in all forms, so whether female, gender, race, refugees, and let's see if we can give these people a chance to break into such a niche kind of closed industry. And in a few years' time, they'll be partners and they'll be writing the checks. And then you'll see what Apoorv just said, that the ideas that aren't necessarily tech or Slack or Apple, and you'll see them and hopefully make them into billion-dollar companies.
Great. So beyond only entrepreneurs, we also need investors from refugee background, right? Okay, great. So that's all nice. But let's talk about financing this. I would like to know more a little bit about who are your funds you're working with, or the LPs are backing you. Could you start with this, Kristina, please? You elaborate a little bit.
Sure. So for FAIRE, it's actually very easy. It's Nick. It's his personal project. And so Nick is the one who is financing all of our activities. It was very important for him to not only continue his career as an entrepreneur, and he has invested in a tech startup here in France, and he's working with them currently. That is his current entrepreneurial project, or his for-profit entrepreneurial project. Mm-hmm. So FAIRE as a nonprofit entity. And that was a very specific choice because we realized that we needed to fund early on. So, we're much more in a kind of business angel stance, in the sense that what we're investing in will be fairly high risk because it's early stages. So we have no way of knowing, will it succeed or not? We're making bets. We're making bets on the entrepreneurs we fund. But we realize the necessity to invest at this early stage to help them get off the ground. Longer term, the vision for FAIRE is to create a second brick, which is an investment fund, which will be a pure investment fund for seed, for Series A investing, that will probably be opened up to other investors. But for the time being, we're keeping FAIRE private so that Nick can really ensure that the focus stays where he feels the need is, and where we see that focusing on what no one else wants to fund today, but that what we know needs to be funded. So.
Okay. Great. So obviously some people are very much strong conviction and due to their own personal experiences. Apoorv, could you maybe elaborate a little bit about your LPs? What are the risk-reward perceptions? How does the market look to the investing in refugees?
Yeah, there's a weird thing about the LPs that they don't like to be found, which I found out after I started raising. So without taking names, I think the makeup or the composition of the LP is a lot of DAFs, donor advised funds. There's a lot of HNWIs and their family offices. Now that could also be because we are a first-time fund, so I think like it's kind of hard to say whether like the composition of the LP stack is because you like identify as an impact investor or whether that is more because you're a first-time fund. I think it's the later, and the reason for that is ultimately, if you think about a venture fund, you're investing in equity, right? So I haven't found a way that like, all right, I will invest in equity, but I will stop at 2x return. So that's not how it works actually. Like, so if you invest in equity, you're all in. You cannot like grow slowly, like the Moneyball approach. A lot of people talk about it. I don't think it quite works. Alternatively, if you could be a fund that like does revenue-based investing, but the challenge is what again Kristina was saying, a entrepreneur who is at basically an idea stage will like revenue-based investing doesn't work for them, right? Because like they don't have revenue, so how do they return? So I think LPs for if like this question is more tailored towards an emerging like fund manager, let's say in impact space, probably like H&WIs, I would say like should be the top priority. And the reason for that is they're more flexible in like how they basically allocate capital, family offices, and then like large like foundations. And again, like foundations have like bigger checks, but they also are like more like constrained by basically their charters and what they can do and what they can support. So that's just been my experience. Fundraising.
Okay, great. Nikita, would you elaborate a little bit with which funds you're working on and what is their motivation to back this initiative?
Something I really want to point out is all the funds that sponsor included VC. I'm going to be very honest, they are allies. They are, generally the partners are white males. And I think for them, it was super important to see that we've got to, in the most kind of blunt way, put our money where our mouth is. Yes, it's good to talk about it and it's good to look at reports and all of these things, but actually we've got to train the next generation of VCs. And just to kind of give a broad spectrum of the venture partners involved, we've got Notion, where Included VC was conceptualized. We've got Daphne in France, you've got Seedcamp in London, you've got Enern in Prague, you've got Creandum in Stockholm, K-Fund in Spain, Mangrove in Luxembourg, Wilson Sonsini. And we've actually just had M12, Microsoft's venture fund, join. And so I think what makes Included VC kind of special, if that is the word, is there's a consortium of well-known kind of renowned venture firms in Europe and globally now who are saying that we want to make a change. We want to help make the change. And Yama, they're very aware that these are going to take, I think like Apoorv and Kristina will agree, that it's going to take 7 to 10 years. This isn't a 1 year kind of thing, or why are we looking at our numbers, or we've not, the venture capital hasn't changed this year. It's going to be a very long-term game. And I think it's getting these people into positions, then them getting to the level where they can influence decisions, and then them slowly bringing in the change that we should invest in completely a different makeup. And I think companies and funds will thrive once that happens.
Okay, great discussion. Given the risk-reward perspectives, I would like to know more about your specific approach. And I also put the question, is VC the right instrument, the right tool to finance refugee entrepreneurship? And maybe you guys can give specific examples of cases you have invested in. Would you like to start with this, Apoorv?
Yeah, no, I was kind of like, like kicking myself that my smile actually would have betrayed like the challenge I've basically seen in dealing with this. And, there was a time I would say that like venture capital was probably not the right solution until like you realize that if you really are trying to create like innovation, right, like ultimately the money has to go into like the product itself. And so like, if not venture, then what? Interestingly, I think like, the challenge that happens that from my own experience that I've seen in when you sort of like decide whether like where on the impact versus return spectrum you want to be. I think like generally the question of is this an impact investment is almost asked in a binary sense of like, is this yes or no? And I don't think the answer is ever yes or no. It's basically like how impactful it is, like where on the like the spectrum does it lie? I feel like one of the challenges in terms of risk reward is that like for venture investing to work, I think it's basically a purchasing equity. And so the value of the equity has to rise very quickly. And that happens when the company's like top line grows and expands very like rapidly. Now, I personally feel conflicted at times where I feel like there is a company that is doing great work, but they should not basically grow at all costs. Like they should be, because, like there is a triage that happens. The users of the solution are not always the customers. So the growth has to be more organic rather than basically, like you like dump a lot of money into it and then do user acquisition, and through that you basically show growth. So it's a challenge. I feel like, yes, as a VC investor, I feel like I have had to walk away from really companies that I would have really loved to support in my personal capacity, but it's just that I'm also like have a fiduciary responsibility to my investors, and that solution, as great as it may be, like is probably not a good fit either for the founding team, by the way, to dilute their equity and have somebody sit on the board and then start telling them like what they should be doing. I feel, in those cases, like there are alternate ways of like finding capital. But I think, to give an example, I think there's this company, basically what they do is that I think they're not the only ones doing this anymore, but they take recycled billboards and they make it into tents that they distribute at the camps. Again, like a very sort of like impactful solution and idea. And sorry about the firecrackers, just like festivities going on behind me, if you can. So, but the challenge is, like one, there is aside from the supply chain and like it's a very complicated supply chain to basically like secure like billboards and everything, like fabricate them and then like sort of like send them over. But you are not scoping that like there is like an exploding market that needs those tents, right? You would hope that this problem is getting solved and fewer people actually need those tents. That somehow doesn't work for venture math, right? Because the venture math basically needs like it to be $1 billion market, like it needs to keep on growing, expanding. So that would be one example that I think like I'm very profoundly sort of like unhappy about, in the sense that like I would have loved to support them. It's just that like my constraint as a fund manager, like making equity investments, like would not permit me to do that.
Okay, great. There is something called herding behavior in financial economics. So people invest, follow each other. And maybe I can jump to Kristina. I remember in our earlier conversation, you said, we want to be the first believer. Could you elaborate about this? And maybe you can give an example of a company you guys have backed.
We are, in essence, the early, we're really investing, again, pre-seed, and it's much more of a business angel approach. It's a loan because we're a philanthropic body, and so we're not allowed to make money. So it's a 0% loan, zero interest. However, we do feel it's important also, it's not a grant. We don't live in a Care Bear world where everything is roses. Life is hard. And so in the business world, we have to be able to defend ourselves and make the right decisions. The loan program that we have will invest in businesses that are either, some have made it to a soft launch and some are pre-launch, and it's really, they have the beginnings of a proof of concept, but we're also able to invest in businesses that won't have proof of concept because they need to build the prototype. And of course, they won't be able to get that money from a bank. So, we're the earliest investors because we're going to believe. We do have requirements. It's just because you are a migrant or refugee doesn't mean that you get free money from us. It's not free money. We have a loan contract. We require reporting from you, and we will work with you. We evaluate each lendee as any business angel would evaluate an investment. We're looking at the potential market, what the business has been developed, and we're looking at the entrepreneur because it's a relationship. It's longer term. The loans that we have currently, we have 3 loans, and so we're working with 3 entrepreneurs. They're all at 5 years. We don't require repayment before 2 years. Each loan contract will be made and developed according to the business. And if it's going to be a long development sales cycle, we're not going to request a repayment before they're able to get things off the ground. So we're going to take that into consideration. But the 3 entrepreneurs that we are working with are in 3 different sectors. We're working with a industrial recycling, with a social insertion arm to their work. We're working with a business intelligence software as a service, and working with a young Ghanaian who has a literacy app and a program for adults. So 3 very different businesses, 3 very different markets, but each we feel, the relationship between the entrepreneurs and ourselves, we're sharing values, which for us is very important. and we feel there's a potential, that they've done their homework, they found a market, and they have a product that is interesting and answers a potential need. The rest of it is really supporting them in their needs, creating an accompaniment that's going to be bespoke, because each business and each entrepreneur will have different needs, but helping them essentially through hard launch. We want to make them basically support them so that they're on a level playing ground with all the other local entrepreneurs, in which case then it's really just up to the market. Okay, great.
And you could be potentially connecting them to other VCs, right? So trigger this herding behavior. So I go to the audience. We have 5 more minutes. I see here Belinda Perryman is asking, do you see a way that COVID-19 could accelerate the change process as it has within education, health, logistics? And this is also something Nikita mentioned before. Would you like to elaborate on this, Nikita, please? Do you think this COVID is going to be a change maker, accelerate the change?
100%. I think, so just to put it in context, VCs are looking for outliers. You're looking for outlier entrepreneurs, outlier humans, outlier returns. That word is key in everything. And great ideas are born from crisis. It's the person that's sitting there, like Apoorv said, and they're thinking about ideas that you wouldn't ever think about, which I probably wouldn't think about sitting in my house today. And I think what COVID's done is not only accelerated it, but showcased globally that anyone can come up with an idea. Like before, so just to give some context, before you had to fly somewhere to meet a VC, you had to go in person, they would have to come and meet you, you had to find time. Now, they genuinely realize that COVID has completely pushed the agenda of a lot of firms. They've had to sit down and rethink the people they're investing in. So not has it only accelerated opportunity, it's accelerated awareness and exposure. And then I think in turn, we'll see the funds going to diverse individuals, including refugees, but it will take a couple of years to see that impact. Okay.
Apoorv, you want to take your thought on this?
Yeah, very quickly. I think the reason I feel like COVID might actually provide a bit of a tailwind to change is that we do see a more secular migration to remote and distributed work. I think it's kind of people always knew it could be done. Now they've been forced to do, so they're well, we can do it. We don't need to be in the same place. Our hope is that that would allow a lot of skilled migrants, refugees to sort of be able to participate in the digital economy. Again, based on our experience, we feel that having an employment is basically a first step towards integration, right? How do you sort of break that cycle of being in a camp? How do you get out of it? So I feel that again, there is potential, but then again, I think I'm also cautiously optimistic, because I think there's a difference between remote work and work from home, and I think what we are seeing right now is more work from home rather than truly remote or distributed workplace. So our fund is hopefully that's what we are sort of focused on, make it really distributed in the true sense.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're running out of time, and just to wrap up everything, you guys are doing fantastic work. I'm really happy about your work. We would all like to follow up what you're doing. Obviously, this COVID-19 has disproportionately affected low-income people, refugees, migrants. My last question to you as a panelist would be, what do you see missing in our ecosystem to foster entrepreneurship? Any last thoughts? You can go, please, Kristina.
What we're really seeing here is the early stage support. It's not adapted to refugees and migrants, and so FAIRE, what we try and do with the work that we do is support the early stages, so the early life cycle of building a business. The programs that we've created are focused on that. We have a donation program to support incubator programs that have various learning tools for refugee migrant entrepreneurs. So that's really kind of ideation to a soft launch. We have the loan program for hard launch, and the support system that comes around that in order to I guess be a sort of glue that helps get them into incubator programs. Because we support a wide variety of types of businesses, and we're sector agnostic. We really feel that it makes much more sense. If we're supporting a tech company, they should be in a tech incubator. If it's a retail, they should be in a retail incubator. However, we know that they may need other accompaniment and not necessarily understanding the legal context within France. the special accounting systems and whatnot. And so we want to provide them with that kind of assistance, working with various consultants. We're not an expert in everything. No one is an expert in everything. But what we're looking at doing is providing a sort of clé en main. I'm going to speak a little bit of French, just everything included, an all-inclusive program, you could say, that basically fills in those gaps. But because we're figuring it out, FAIRE has existed for just over 2 years. You know, we're new, we're a startup too. So we're still figuring this out, and we work with each entrepreneur. And the idea is that, well, you know what? Let's be lean and agile ourselves so that we can adjust as the needs are, because the needs can be on an individual level. But the programs that we've created are there to respond to those missing support points.
Okay, I see this is a great discussion. We are running out of time. I would like to ask the audience to reach out to you guys if they have any specific questions. This has been a great discussion. I think we are just getting started, but the time is over, unfortunately. I would like to thank our audience and our panel, and enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you so much, guys.
You like what you hear? You should definitely follow us on your favorite platform. So next time you're on Instagram or Facebook, type Startups Without Borders and check out all the videos, the stories, and the resources for you to become a legend.